Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episodes 7 and 8. Because the other weekend was a big comic convention called Comic-Con, a couple of stuff came out for Strange New Worlds, and they dropped one of the episodes early, which was the crossover with Lower Decks. But because I don't have that through Paramount Plus, I don't have that dropped, so I had to wait for it to come out today, which is also the time they dropped episode 8. So now we have 2 episodes to talk about. I ain't complaining. The more the merrier. I remember, was it a year ago? I think it was like after season 1 came out. They renewed it for a second season. They said they're doing the crossover of Lower Decks. I really like Lower Decks. I think it's a really fun show. It's the kind of thing that does kind of exist because it's doing like the Rick and Morty aesthetic, but it's Star Trek and it's so on the nose sometimes, but the jokes land, the voice acting is great, the animation budget is phenomenal, and I'm very impressed with that show. So, a crossover, hey, I think there's something to explore there. And you know what? They did something really fun. It's so simple and so easy, but sometimes it's all you want for Star Trek. Like, we can do, and this week proved it, we can do something so drastically different from the first episode of the week to the next one that you're like, wow, how is this the same show? And then next week we're doing the musical, and you're just like, okay, hold on, why is all of this happening all of a sudden? Why do we have like one very serious episode in the middle of the crossover in the musical? That's really weird. I guess you do want to spread it out a little bit, but it does feel kind of weird that those two would be in between the other two. So this is Strange New Worlds, but you wouldn't tell from the opening of this episode called Those Old Scientists, which is probably my favorite joke of the show, where in the Lower Decks timeline, Ranson calls the TOS era Those Old Scientists, which is where this show takes place. That is really fun and cute, and I like that. You wouldn't tell it's Strange New Worlds, though, because it opens up, we're in the Lower Decks timeline, and our main characters of that show, they are going to investigate it's like a weird portal, the weird portal device that's just on this planet just to check it out because a century ago, I think it was, 120 years, not specifically that, but around that, the crew of the Enterprise went to check out that little portal, and now they're here to check up on it again a century later. They go there, and it's cool, and Boimler wants to get his picture taken at the portal, so he gets his picture taken in a Spock pose, and the flash of the camera activates the portal. Boop-de-boop, Jack Quaid shows up in the real world, in the Strange New Worlds timeline. Okay, I'm here for it. Jack Quaid's the best. He has been slowly but effortlessly putting in a really good amount of voice actor work, and he's got an iconic voice, but he's shown he can do stuff with that. And just as a physical actor, the dude's pretty talented. He's been having a pretty good summer so far, because not only is he Superman in My Adventures of Superman, he's appearing in Oppenheimer, and now he's doing the live-action Star Trek thing. So this guy, he's got a good thing going for him. And then this episode is just, what if a fan of Strange New Worlds got to be on the Enterprise and look at all the cool people there? That's what we're doing. That's what this is. And it's really fun to see that because Quaid's fun. He knows his bits well. He knows what he's good at doing, and he can play into that perfectly. They give him the purple hair. They do kind of tone it down a bit, so it's a little more like, is it like the shading or like the shadowing that's kind of more purple and it's like actually black? But no, it's purple. It looks really funny and silly, and he just freaks out. He gets to see Pike, he gets to see Spock, he knows everybody, and he's super excited to see all of them, and he's super nervous about Una Chin Riley, which is so fun, and just makes for a great dynamic. It's going to be hard no matter what you do to transition from the animated voice that you're just doing the voice for to the live action. But he handles it well. It does feel like Boimler as a character in a new format. He's taller than a lot of the people on the ship, which that's just what Jack Quaid is, and he makes it work. So they're going to try to figure out a way to get him back home, and that's where the fun comes in. There's some hijinks involved, a lot of hijinks this season, which I think was just something they said, yeah, people responded to the Spock and Muck episode last time, let's get involved in that some more. So we do that, and he's just trying not to be, telling people about the future, but he does a bunch like, hey, Pike's birthday becomes a national holiday. Hey, this is what you go on to do. This is what you go on to do. It is insanely fun, and we have a great time with it, and it looks really cool. And then there's like a conflict with some of the Orions, because in the course of this present timeline, Orions are still pirates, but we know Tendi in the future, she's a scientist, and she gets to be like an Orion officer at Starfleet. But the tension's not there. But we also know because of that, her great-grandmother is on one of the ships that steals the portal. They want to steal the portal, and that's pretty fun. I'm here for that. What a weird thing. I guess it can just leave and go to places, so that's kind of cool. And you just, it is surprisingly Boimler's episode, which is kind of cool. It does play like it could just be an episode of Lower Decks if we just did this all animated. But it's kind of interesting that he just is so excited about being in the past because things were different. He's excited about the technology. He's excited about the ship. He knows every single detail about everything. Leanne's like, don't touch anything. Don't fall in love. Don't have a big experience. He starts to freak out because he thinks he's messing up Spock because Spock is just all giggly and smiley. He's laughing and he's having a good time. And he has a conversation with Chapel about that. And she's like, no, it's just because we're kind of kissy. And I like that, and he's starting to freak out, and that leads it to something that hasn't been explored a lot. Now, it's weird because that was a few episodes ago now where Spock was with Chapel, and now here we are, and we haven't really delved deeper into that relationship. Not that we need to. It's just very interesting that we haven't explored the full-on romance of that aspect yet. But hey, again, we don't need to do that. Why else would we have anything to go on there? We do have a little bit of power we can use to get the portal running again. Hopefully it'll work. But as we try to use the portal again to send Boimler back, Mariner falls through and Tawny Newsome shows up, and she is great too. Again, there's a big difference in character. It's weird to say that Quaid looks more like Boimler than Tawny looks like, Mariner, but it does. And look, she's got the rolled up sleeves. She's got the hair in the same style. You just recognize the voice instantly, and that I think is the biggest draw that makes it work, is that their voices just sound so specifically Boimler and Mariner that it works no matter how they look. And she shows up, and she's not excited to be there, and she's just like, okay, this is kind of weird, but whatever. She just wants to meet Uhura, and she does, and that's a really fun moment. It's you gotta meet your hero. Well, she's stressed out and she's young and she's annoying. We gotta get this kid some drinks so she can drink up and relax a bit. And she doesn't even have one sip before she solves the problem to figure out what built this old portal thing. It's kind of fun. It's just hijinks and stuff. And you do get some really good timing from Newsome and Quaid. They really figured that out fast. And I do like that. I just like the subtleties of all the in jokes with everything. Hey, everyone talks so fast and loud in their timeline, and in the past timeline everyone's so slow and stoic. That's really funny. Just the jokes. I'm so glad somebody else said Hot Spock, because I've been saying that since season 1. Hot Spock. Right away Mariner's I can't believe Hot Spock is so Hot Spock. I love that. Jokes about Pike's hair. Let's keep it going. I am here for all of that. It's so fun, and everyone just freaking out because Boimler can't talk to Una Chin Riley. It is really funny and really sweet. And they're we're probably going to be stuck here, so maybe we should steal a ship and fix the situation that Boimler messed up with the Orions. Doesn't work. They get sent to Pike's private quarters where he's okay, you seriously need to stop doing stuff because it's really weird. But also, could you stop telling people it's my birthday coming up because I don't want to party, because Pike is now going to turn the age older than his father ever was, and he just kind of wants to be alone for that because, old men have feelings like that. How old is Pike? I know how old Anson Mount is. How old is Pike supposed to be? Is he playing older? I can't really tell. I think he's playing around 50, right? He's got to be. I'd imagine at least. And, Boiler's kind of just accept that people want to spend time with you, dude. And that kind of brings it together. And that's when they learn how they could get back home. Look, it's a wrap up pretty fast kind of episode. That's fine. You have to do that. We don't need to dwell on this type of universe for too long. We have all the jokes being presented. We have all the quality being presented. The original Enterprise that was built was made with like a different material, and they always put like a part of the original ship in the new one. So the material that was built from the original ship is exactly what they need to get back home. And yeah, they get back home. And it's just easy. It's fun. It works. Beautiful moment where, we actually get to see Boimler talk to Chin Riley, and he's like, yeah, I have your poster, not in like a weird way though, but it's like, yeah, you're like the face of Starfleet like recruitment. That's pretty cool. For 100 years, that's pretty cool. And okay, I mean, you'd think they'd update it, but why not? Ad Astra, ad Aspera, is that what it is? I hope that's what it is, because that's what happens there. Then they go back home and the day is saved, and that's what, like, it's an easy, simple crossover. And I'm here for it. I was smiling through all of it. It was so cool to see Newsom and Quaid show up just to have fun. Our main cast members are just like reacting to the events of this silly cartoon. And then at the end, just for fun, they're like, you know what? What if we were in the Lower Decks timeline? And they start drinking that Orion ale because they kind of work things out with the Orions a little bit to prove that they found the portal. And, everything with Tendi there, it works fine. Works pretty cool, actually, I will say. And we just get to see all of the main cast of Strange New Worlds in the Lower Deck style. And it's very fun, and they start to, like, freak out. Because when Quaid shows up, he's like, is everything more, like, three-dimensional? And then Ortegas is like, are we two-dimensional? Crazy. And I had fun with that. Look, a fun episode of Star Trek. How can I be mad about that? That's what this show thrives on. It needs to do that. But then, it goes really intense and deep in another classic direction of Star Trek. So, we did our fun crossover. Everyone's a cartoon. Look how cool we are. What if for the next episode, it's all war relations with a terrorist? And you're like, oh, okay. I mean, we just had a lot of fun. Can we ease back into, like, the pain and suffering of others? No, we're going full hog into it. And you're like, okay, I guess. So this episode focuses on a Klingon ambassador who is coming aboard the Enterprise as like a peacekeeper to like show like the divide of the Klingon and how they can change and reform and the efforts they're making to end that part of the war. You're like, okay, that's kind of fun. But let's not forget, we have a couple crew members aboard this ship that fought in the war, that saw people die, that had harshnesses happen to them during the war. Erica Ortegas, of course, is clearly upset with everything going on. And, of course, Nurse Chapel and Dr. Mbenga. And, like, what a really interesting arc. This is something that's not uncommon in Star Trek. Even the original series or those old scientists dealt with this kind of thing before. There's, like, the classic episode. I cannot remember the name, but there's, like, the Kirk one of the Klingon. You get all that. No, or was it the I think it's the... No, yeah. In the original series, there was the Romulan who came aboard the ship, and people were like upset with like a Romulan being there. We're doing it with a Klingon now, and that's fine. And this episode is cut between two timelines. We get to see Mbenga and Chapel in the past when they were on Jigal, where like that was like the end of like the efforts on Jigal, which... Man, if you just want to like drive a point home showing like the casualties of war in an era of Starfleet where they were doing that destructive stuff, you nailed it. It's intense. Like the first time Chapel like shows up to actually like start with the efforts on Chakal, she becomes the head nurse because everyone else is being transferred or they're dead and like everything's just booming and going bad and nobody can save anybody. And it's like dark and dystopian and they're sleeping in tents and they have to like shuttle people. They have to teleport people back to the base when they like head back out to the war and everyone's coming back wounded or burned or dead. And it's terrifying. And Mbenga's trying to help like this one soldier who's literally like cut open and hurting. And it comes to the point where they have to like stitch his heart back up manually because they don't have like a biological like a 3D printer, I guess, to like make him the actual organs. And then like they stitch him up and he's just like a young kid and Bang is like, you're like a young man and you don't know what you're believing anymore because this young soldier is now questioning his loyalty to Starfleet and the war, but he's still a loyal soldier, so he's going to run back out just being stitched up and it's going to lead to his death. And you're like, okay, but we just did the funny crossover. Can we have a minute to breathe here? And the guy that's on the ship, the Klingon that's on the ship, he orchestrated all the events on Jagal, and now he's supposedly reformed. And you just have like beautiful, beautiful dialogue pieces of people just like tense at dinners, tense while they're sparring. I love all of it so much. Like, it is just crazy how people are reacting. And we have to go to like this really important dinner. Is it going to work? Who's to say? It gets very intense when our soldiers from the Klingon War start to accuse this man of not being the person he says he is, because he killed his own soldiers to flee them and to like show like the harshness of all that. He was the butcher of Jakal, and we'll get to that in a minute, because this episode has a very peculiar ending, and I'm not convinced I love it. But yeah, I mean, it's just a great, like, classic Star Trek dinner. And Spock wants to help Chapel, but he doesn't know how to do that. And she's just like, war changes you. You can't fix this problem. You just gotta live with it. And you're like, yeah, okay, I suppose you do. But you could also ask for help. Like, that's not a big thing. But this is Mbanga's episode. I love Mbanga. He might be my favorite character now. I just think, like, this one solidified that this is a broken man who has experienced every single aspect that Starfleet has to offer. He has been in the hardships of war. He's a scientist trying to study these things. He's a doctor trying to fix things. This dude's been through hell. It also reminded me that, like, last season he had a daughter stuck inside the transporter. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Crazy. But you just see, like, on the battlefields of Jakal, like, everybody is dying and getting hurt, and this kid comes back with his throat slit. He's dead. And you just see Mbanga like, well, I gotta be the thing I don't want to be, and he goes full on John Wick. He becomes the butcher of Jakal, and he goes in to like end the mission because he didn't want to do it before, and he's just gonna go kill a bunch of Klingons, and it's incredible. And we're jumping around a lot. He has a very interesting like sparring session with like the Klingon ambassador, and it's just them talking about, you know, being in the thrall of battle and what you have to do to survive, and like the mistakes that come from that, and how war changes a person. And that's the theme of this episode. You know, it's partially like, don't be racist to like a race of people that are like warriors and stuff, you know? Don't have your prejudice be like the driving factor. But also like, you know, how can you forgive somebody that did those horrific things to you? And that is really interesting. And even Pike has like that kind of like dialogue in the episode of like, how can like Starfleet be the face of like peace when our own ship is just full of this hate? And that's a very fascinating thing to explore, a very Star Trek thing to explore. Nobody does it better. And this episode, I don't know if it's a satisfying ending to that journey, because it's a weird one. But I think they did pretty good, you know? I love the sparring session. It's just really intense and great, and Mbanga just leaves like kind of defeated by it. And you get the idea that he is playing the sides here. So this Klingon ambassador has like made himself like known throughout Starfleet and the world that he killed his own people because they were doing these destructive things, and he saw the carnage of Jakal and was like, I have to change this and fix this. What we learn later in the episode is that he didn't actually kill anybody. It was Mbanga who showed up and slaughtered all of them. And he like calls out one of the names of the Klingon that fought the hardest, thinking that this guy would know, but of course he doesn't. Like, he ran away because he was a coward, and that's when he tried to reform himself. So the idea is that he didn't actually like learn from the mistakes of the harshness of the war, but of his own cowardice. So you're like, that is so intense, because we see him giving the orders to slaughter children and kill everything in sight, and this guy's own cowardice of being killed by Mbanga is what led him to wanting to change this piece. You're like, that is so freaking intense. Like, that is crazy good stuff. I love just how dark the colors are in the flashbacks to show you like the harshness of this. But when Mbanga is killing those Klingons, you just see blood everywhere. You see throats getting slit and stabbed, and it's just so intense and terrifying. I really, really like that. It just works, and just showing you like, I'm a different man because of you. I lost a lot of stuff with my family because of you, and I wanted to find you. Now here you are in like in my medical bay, just preaching something that never happened for the sake of change. Like, this is, and it's so ambiguous. I just really respect it, because it could be like M'Benga called him out on his shit and he was right about it, or maybe that this guy actually learned his lesson and he just came about it a different way, but it's more about the story of how he learned it that's going to be what changes people. And that is such a fascinating thing to explore. A really creative and smart idea. And again, we're coming off of the Lower Decks crossover where everything's goofy. In this one, you're literally on the edge of your seat, because like, okay, yeah, war sucks, that's terrifying, and now this criminal is having dinner with your captain and everybody's laughing at his jokes. That is really crazy and intense, and the ending is so bizarre, because what happens, if you can believe it, is M'Benga kills him. And it's like this idea, because he admits his role in the events of Jagal to the Klingon ambassador, and he's just like, yeah, so everything you did was a lie, but the lie is what's important to get the work actually done. But of course, M'Benga doesn't care about that, and just kind of like, he's egging this guy on to like attack him so he can justify using the knife that he used to kill the Klingons. It's a knife that he found in the one kid, right? I think he found the knife on the kid, and he was going to use it to attack the Klingons. Yeah, that's what it would be. And there's like a little scuff. We see like the silhouette behind something in the medical bay. Chapel walks in, and we see like the silhouette of the dagger being stabbed into the Klingon ambassador, and he's dead. And by all accounts, because Chapel herself, hey, she experienced the hardships of war too, she's going to defend M'Benga a bit, just be like, yeah, it was a man attacking him and threatening him, and that's what happened there. But what I find most interesting about that is that it kind of ends so ambiguously, where Pike is kind of like, the episode ends with Pike and M'Benga having a conversation, and Pike is just like, look, we've known each other a long time, I'd like to believe you would tell me like an authentic tale or an authentic case of what happened here. But it's kind of like, M'Benga plays off like, the battle was started by him. Maybe not in this particular instance, but throughout our past transgressions, he instigated it all. Through the slaughter of children and innocent lives, I just happened to know where this was leading. It's very bizarre, and it's not like a happy ending where everybody learns a lesson either, because M'Benga kind of gets away with like killing him, and even if his message would have been peace, it doesn't sit well that a Starfleet officer got away with murdering this man. Now, the fact that he does kill him makes me think he was full of shit, and I don't like that. I think it works better if this ambassador actually learned his lesson through the cowardice, which is what I think he did, which doesn't justify M'Benga's actions for hurting him and killing him. It just, it gets off a little too clean with like justifying the hatred towards this Klingon from the crew, and that doesn't sit right. But maybe that's the entire point, where I'm supposed to sit here and tell you, like, that ending really messes you up, because it doesn't seem like anybody learned their lesson, and prejudice kind of won out in the end, and hatred won out in the end, and that's terrifying and scary. But also, M'Benga showers, and he looks like a buff slab of meat, and I like it a lot. And he kills a bunch of Klingons. And it's like really good action and really good dialogue and intense sequences of just two dudes sparring, of just people at a dinner table. It's really impressive, while not perfectly conveyed in the end. I don't know, it's such a bizarre ending. I don't hate it. I do not hate the ending, but it doesn't 100% work for me. And maybe that's the point. I don't think it is. I just, it's very bizarre. He kind of gets away with it. I'm not sure I like that happening for M'Benga, because it just kind of takes away some agency of his character, where his actions are justified for being that bitter. I don't know if that's perfect. But, you know, we did do the Newsom and Quaid stuff, so that's fun. And then next week's the musical. What is happening? Like, it's so weird that it just goes crossover, Dark War stuff, musical finale. That is so weird, but But that's Star Trek, baby. And that's Strange New Worlds episode 7 and 8. And thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and X, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I'll catch you all in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.